In this presentation, we're going to look at giving presentations. So what are the elements of a good presentation? Well, you need something interesting to say, because otherwise, what's the point of listening to you? It needs to be presented well, presented professionally. And you need to have, that's the most important thing, is to have a connection between you and the audience. So, the content has to be good content. It needs to be well structured so that the audience can follow your argument or the progression through your presentation. So you need to signpost where you are, and you need to be able to emphasize the main points. And your delivery has to be clear and understandable. So when we're preparing presentations, we can think about 3 W's. The first is, why are you presenting? What's your purpose? What's your reason? What do you want to achieve with this presentation? And the audience, why are the audience there? What do they want to learn? What are you going to present is the second W. What do the audience want to know from your presentation? So what are the key points? Or what are you trying to achieve? And who are your audience? Are they the right audience for this particular presentation? Your presentation needs to be well structured, so you need an introduction, the body of the presentation, the main part of the presentation, some conclusions, and maybe some questions at the end. But we can add to this, and at the beginning we can add a bang, something interesting to grab the audience's attention, and then the introduction. And then the key points in the body of the presentation with examples to illustrate your key points. And then at the end, in the conclusion, to recap on your main points and end with a bang. So let's look at the introduction. You might want to start with a greeting. You say your name, give the reason why you're there. What's your purpose? What's the purpose of the presentation? How long it might take? And what's your attitude towards questions? Can the audience interrupt you during the presentation, or should they wait until the end of the presentation? Now this is quite formulaic and not very exciting. So a more advanced one would start with this bang at the beginning, this hook, and then the reason for your presentation and the purpose. Notice here we're not introducing ourselves, because often you don't have to introduce yourself, because the audience, perhaps they're your co-workers, they know who you are, or your classmates, they know who you are, so you don't need to say your name. Or your name is in the conference program, so that you don't need to say your name. Or perhaps you've been introduced by somebody, so again, you don't need to say your name. Now let's look at the body of the presentation. It should be divided into sections, clearly delineated, and each section should deal with one point. These sections should be in a logical order, and what you say in the section should also be in a logical order. Everything should be clearly signposted, so the audience know if you're looking back at something you said before, or you're moving on to something you're going to talk about next. If we look at one particular kind of section, it might be structured like this. At the beginning of the section, you should always state the topic of the section. What's this section about? It shouldn't be a mystery. This should be at the beginning. And then you say what the problem or the issue is, and say why this is a problem or an issue, say what could be done, and say why this will help. That's a logically sequenced problem solution section. So you need to think about the sequence of your sections. Are they logically organized? In your conclusion, you'll recap the main points made. Perhaps you'll say thank you, though that's quite boring, and then ask any questions. This is formulaic and quite dull. We can make this more interesting by recapping the main points made and then ending with a nice bang at the end, so that they go away with this memorable ending. Now, if there are questions, if there's a question session, you need to be able to thank the person for the question. You need to be able to respond to the questions that can be responded to. Or if you can't respond to the question, you should be able to deflect the question and say something like, that's a very complex issue, we don't have time to go into it at the moment, or I don't have that data, or I haven't investigated that aspect of it. You deflect away from answering the question. Or you could reflect the question back on the questioner, especially if it's an aggressive, negative question, which is trying to put you on the spot and make you look stupid. You reflect it back on the questioner by saying something like, you seem to have thought a lot about this. What do you think about it? So, how to prepare presentations? Well, we start with brainstorming ideas or doing some research to find out something interesting to say about the topic. Then you might want to use a script to prepare your presentation. And you might want to sound script this, which is where you mark the words which get the most stress, and you divide it into different sections, and you mark the intonation, whether it's rising or falling intonation. And this is a useful way of helping you prepare to deliver your presentation. You're like an actor learning his lines. Or you might want to take your script and then put it into notes and have it on small cards, which you just refer to remind you of where you are in the speech, in the presentation. You don't read from these, you just use them as an aide-memoire. Then you should practice. Practice makes perfect. Ideally, you practice with someone so that they can give you feedback on your performance. Then you'll improve your performance, improve your script, improve your presentation, improve your slides. Just make it better based on the feedback which you get during the practice. Then practice again. And finally, you'll perform your presentation. You'll give your presentation to a live audience. And it will go fantastically because you're prepared. But you should still get feedback from your teacher or from a friend sitting in the back. How well did it go? It might be on a formal form like this, or it might just be informal notes taken by somebody. But it's important to get feedback on your performance because you want to try to improve the next time. So you should reflect on what went well, what didn't go well, and what could be improved. And then hopefully next time you'll do it a bit better, and so on. So some final advice on how to speak and how to stand. You should stand straight. You'll look more confident if you're standing up straight. You should look at the audience. Make eye contact. Look around the audience. Make contact with the audience through your eyes. Smile. Speak clearly so that the audience can understand what you're saying. Speak loudly, but not too loudly. if you speak too loudly, people won't concentrate very hard because they don't actually have to concentrate to hear you. Don't talk to the screen. Your slides on a screen, if you have them, are to help the audience understand where you are in the presentation and to remind you where you are in the presentation. If you're looking at the screen, you shouldn't be talking. If you're talking, you should be looking at the audience. And whatever you do, don't have a lot of text on your slides and don't read your slides. That's very, very bad. It's almost the worst thing you can do.